here today. And thank you. We also have staff with us. So as I bring the meeting to order, very grateful to have everybody with us. And if I could call on our clerk, Ms. Fawcett, to review who is with us today from committee staff, and if we have any public present.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you, I can confirm now that we do have quorum. Currently, regrets have been received from Michelle McCarty, Councillor Francis Smith, and Andy White. We do have joining us from staff, Heather Scranage, Manager of Housing and Homelessness, Joanne Boris, Housing Program Administrator, John Henderson, Housing Program Administrator, Nicola Reed, Housing Program Administrator. Derek O'Shea is our meeting host today, and I'm Elizabeth Fawcett, the committee clerk for the Housing and Homelessness Committee. We also have 2 members of the public with us at this time.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And thank you to the members of the public who are with us as well. So we'll move over to the approval of the agenda. So everyone has received the agenda. If there is any discussion. Oh, sorry. Councillor Neal, was that discussion or you were a first for approval of the agenda? Thank you. Perfect. And if I could have a second for approval of the agenda. Thank you to, I saw Mr. Clark and then Councillor Doherty. And if I could have a show of hands for all in favor, please. Thank you so much. So we'll move over to confirmation of minutes. And so again, we will, if there's anything to review, if there's any discussion to be had regarding the minutes from the previous meeting. If not, I will make the motion that the minutes of the Housing and Homelessness Advisory Committee meeting held Thursday, July 14th, 2022 be approved. If I could have a first for that. Thank you, Councillor Doherty. If I could have a second for that. Thank you, Ms. Everett. And then a show of hands for all in favor. Thank you. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest from any committee members? Okay, and we do not have any delegations today. And then we do not have any briefings, but we do have 2 business items. So the first is Housing for All, a Mayor's Task Force on Housing follow-up event, and the report of the Chief Administrative Officer, which was attached for our information. I believe that there is somebody who will speak briefly to that business item. From staff. I'll ask Ms. Fawcett if that's the case.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, I do believe that Ms. Scranage will be providing some introductory remarks on this file.
Yes, thank you. And through you, Madam Chair, I just wanted to thank everyone for their time today and always on this. We have presented 2 information reports today. One, our quarterly standing update, and the other, the Housing Now event update. We do have a little bit of an update that we can provide with respect to the standing update. I do have with me Joanne, Nicola, and John, housing program administrators from the Housing and Social Services Department, who can touch on the various sections, the homelessness services, the social housing and affordable housing portfolios, and we'll provide a brief update. So maybe Joanne can provide an update on homelessness now. Thank you.
Sorry, Madam Chair, if I could just jump in quickly, just for Ms. Scranage's information. Just we're on the first business item that has to do with the Mayor's Task Force on Housing. Just as a clarification for that one, and then we can go into the standing update report, if that's okay with you, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Thank you so much. So then if there are any questions on the Housing Now, we're here for that.
Okay, so there are not any questions from that information report? No? Okay. Thank you. I think in that case, Ms. Boris, you could proceed.
Good afternoon.
Oh, sorry. You know what? I will also just open it up in case there are questions from the public. If there's anyone from the public, you will have a chance to ask your questions for 5 minutes or comments related to business item A, the Housing for All Mayor's Task Force on Housing follow-up event.
Madam Chair, if I may, I will ask those who are with us if they wish to speak to the item, if they could raise their hand in Zoom so that we may call on them. And I do see that Joan Bowie has her hand raised.
Perfect. Thank you. Hi, Joan, please go ahead.
Oh, hi. I hope I'm in the right report. I read through this a couple of days ago, so if I'm not, please correct me. I was concerned about something that I read on the update of the Mayor's Task Force on Housing, that the city would be looking, someone, I guess, is going to be looking at what public land could be built on. And in that report, there was a mention of the Memorial Center grounds. So I'd like to follow up and ask if that is so, and how there's supposed to be a staff report about what land's available. So I wonder if that staff report is available to the public. Thank you. That's my question.
Thank you very much. From city staff.
Thank you, everyone. Through you, Madam Chair. The reference to the Memorial Center was actually brought up by a member of the public that attended the event. So some of those comments in there are verbatim from what was brought forward. So the idea was not to filter the comments. The Memorial Center site was referenced by a member of someone in attendance at the event that thought that that was an area that could be considered for housing. So that's the status of that. There's no further inquiry on the Memorial Center site to my knowledge, but the city is looking at land availability, not only municipal lands, but also working with the province and the federal government to consider different opportunities for land availability.
Thank you. Councillor Neal. Oh, sorry, you're on mute.
Yeah, I represent that district, and I just want to, I know Joan will remember this well, but there was some discussion, I think it was in 2019, about the possibility of building on the memorial grounds and the park in particular. That's a really popular dog park. There's a cricket field there and 2 baseball diamonds. And frankly, there was a huge group of people, friends of the Memorial Center, that formed and fought vehemently against the idea of putting housing, apartments, buildings on what is now a parkland. And just a reminder that that will rear its ugly head again if there is a city proposal to allow private development on that site. So just a cautionary tale for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Was there anyone else from the public who wanted to speak?
Madam Chair, I do see that Ms. Bowie does have her hand raised a second time, if she may speak again.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to thank you very much for the explanation. I just wondered, though, if the staff report would be forthcoming, which is implied. The second thing is that we recently have had a report from, I don't know exactly, I guess it's Recreation, who is asked for a big grant of money to look at rehabilitating the Memorial Center building. So obviously, I don't expect everybody on these committees who comes from outside, members of the public, they don't necessarily know what other parts of the city are doing. So in this case, if the city's investing money into improving the Memorial Center and looking at partnering with the Y and Queens and so on and so forth, it's unfortunate that they're spending money there if they're also thinking of spending money on housing and so on. So I appreciate the explanation that this was just a comment, but I would like to know when the staff report of available public and private land for development might be coming forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you, and through you, Madam Chair. So there is no forthcoming report related to housing for the Memorial Center that we're aware of at this time. City staff do review, as John mentioned, public land availability, and any use of those lands would come forward to council for any sort of recommendation. Any review for change of use would be undertaken in official plan update. But at this time, to your point about other work going on for the Memorial Center, I'm not aware of discussion related to the Memorial Center specifically coming forward for a report to council or committee.
Thank you, Councillor Doherty.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. Just following up on that question. So the report that was referred to in this report, that will be coming to council, is that correct?
Thank you, and through you, and I apologize, I'm not very clear what report it's referring to that we might be bringing forward. The Memorial Center was referenced by a member of the public in that Housing for Now event. That wasn't a staff mention or recommendation. So I don't think there is the intent to bring forward any report on that at this time.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Fawcett, was there anyone else from the public who wanted to speak to business item A?
Madam Chair, there are no further hands.
Okay. So then we will move forward with business item B, which is the Q4 standing update report. And I know Ms. Granich had begun to review that. I was introducing Joanne Boris to speak to that. So I'll let you take it away, Steph.
Thank you very much, and through you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon. I'm happy to answer any questions regarding the homelessness section within the standing update report that you've received, but some of the most notable items to potentially discuss are the fact that all of our new service agreements are now in place or just about in place with our current service providers and service providers that will be offering housing first services and supports and emergency shelters, prevention, diversion, and outreach within the city. Mr. Clark, if you have a question about that, I can certainly answer that now.
Sorry, no, I was going to wait until you finished.
Oh, okay. Perfect. Thank you. Also, just wanted to mention that as per the June 29th special council meeting, the encampment protocol was reinstated, but has been a very gradual process as the city works towards ensuring that there are safe spaces for individuals who are currently unhoused and unable to access shelter and support. Some good news is that on November the 16th, we will be receiving the 5 extra sleeping cabins at Portsmouth Olympic Harbor, and those will hopefully be filled quite quickly after their arrival. So we're anticipating within a couple of weeks of them arriving, the new occupants should be in place. The city's made some considerable gains with respect to transitional housing. Tippy Moza is operating almost at full capacity at this point in time. And later into November, early December, Dawn House will be opening their doors to provide some emergency housing supports and transitional housing for women and children within the community. AMHS, Addictions Mental Health Services and Supports, is continuing to offer their highly successful stabilization program, which is actually being run out of Seven Oaks and has helped to house quite a few individuals at this point in time. That's as far as I have to share as far as homelessness. So happy to answer any questions that anyone may have at this point in time. Mr. Clark.
Through you, Madam Chair, a couple of questions. First of all, as I was reading the report and you know, the gains that we have made in terms of additional places is really good news. Unfortunately, demand still outpaces supply. And I'm sorry, I don't remember the date of the report, but I'm wondering since then that you had made a couple of made a reference to the shelter system and still operating at or under, I'll call them pandemic regulations. I guess my first question is: has there been any progress in terms of or discussions with public health and any indication that those restrictions might be released and capacity might be increased? And I guess my second question is, you know, the mornings and evenings are getting colder and winter is coming. Is there an update that you can provide us with where we are with things like warming centers and sort of transitional being a bad word, short-term stopgap places for people to go when it gets really cold outside?
Thank you for the questions, Mr. Clark, and through you, Madam Chair. With respect to the shelter numbers, the shelters are still continuing to work with public health and the IPAC teams to ensure that there is social distancing and enough space in the event of any future COVID outbreaks, and to keep this vulnerable population as safe as possible. But there have been some gains that have been made. So In From the Cold has been able to increase their bed capacity to, my understanding is, at least 22 at this point in time, which is quite a bit larger than they were at the height of the pandemic. The warming center is still functioning and able to accept 19 individuals on a nightly basis, which is wonderful. They have not had to decrease capacity based on the layout of their buildings, so they are functioning at capacity, as is the family shelter, and the youth shelter has actually been able to add some spaces based on their temporary location. So I'm not sure when or at what point in time we'll be able to get the In From the Cold numbers back to where they were pre-pandemic. I think that really is dependent on what happens this winter with COVID and public health guidelines. And as to your second question around the transitional spots, Dawn House, as I mentioned earlier, will be opening up some spaces. Those are for women, but that should help some women who are currently unhoused have access to supports inside, especially as the weather gets colder. And city staff are still continuing to have discussions around what possibilities there might be for additional spaces in the community. But as I'm sure you're aware, both space and staffing are the challenges that we face when we look at adding more beds and more spaces to the system, which is of course something we'd like to be able to do, but that's a process that we're currently working through and hopefully should have more to share on that in the coming weeks. I hope that answers your question.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you. And I believe, yes, Councillor Doherty.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I was going to ask about the warming places, really, because we actually also, the library is important. Do we? We often, we keep the library open. We don't necessarily expand the hours, but we do, is definitely the library. So any kind of warming places, I'd be interested in hearing a little bit more. But also I'd just like to mention that the 5 cabins, most of the cabins were actually fitted out by volunteers in the community, and there is a call out to fit these 5 cabins out. So if anybody's listening to this, if you would like to volunteer to fit out the cabins, please reach out to the people at the cabins. But also I wanted to ask about the by name list. If you could just explain the process of how we update and keep the by name list as true as possible of a reflection of who we are trying to serve, because it is also a very transient population. So I wonder if you could speak to that, please.
Thank you, Councillor Doherty, and through you, Madam Chair. Your first question around some warming locations throughout the winter months during the daytime hours. Absolutely, the libraries are still open, but one of the programs that we are hopeful to have up and running once an agreement is finalized is with the Salvation Army, where they will be opening up daytime drop-in services at their Patrick Street location. That should be early to mid-December when that program opens, and will provide individuals with a warm space to come in, potentially shower, do their laundry, get a meal. There's also programming going on during the daytime hours at the Concession Street site that is being run by Lionhearts, and their meal program is reopening in the evenings also. So individuals are able to go there in the evening hours for a meal and some supports. With respect to the by name list, the by name list's primary function is to ensure that nobody that is homeless within the community is lost or falls through the cracks. So what we ask is that any service providers that we work closely with, or who work very closely with our homeless population, are asking each client if they're willing to allow us to put their name on that by name list, and so that they can then be prioritized for supports and services based on need. So service providers are actively working with us to ensure that we do not, or we know or have a better handle on the number of individuals in the community that are in need of services and supports at this time. I hope that answers your question.
Do you mind if I ask a follow-up question? So what's if a person is, for whatever personal reason, they choose not to go on the list? What happens with that person and with the count?
Thank you, Councillor Doherty. That's a great question, and through you, Madam Chair. So there is an ability to put an individual on anonymously so that they don't get lost, but that would be with unidentifying information, likely only information that their case manager would know. It may mean that the individual does not get prioritized for supports or services, but again, there's an element of choice for individuals on the by name list also, and their autonomy is greatly adhered to in that sense. So it's still important that we do know and have an understanding of what is going on within the homeless community and what the numbers look like. So that's one effort to try and ensure again that we're not, that no one's falling through the cracks.
Thank you, Ms. Boris.
Thank you. Were there any other questions from our committee? And if there aren't, if I could ask Ms. Fawcett to check on anyone with the public who might be interested in speaking.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you, I'll just give a moment here in case the members of the public wish to raise their hand at this time. And I'm not seeing any movement, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. So that report was also for information purposes. There are no items for us to vote on. So we will move forward with number 8, motions. There were no motions presented. Number 9, notices of motion. We did not have any notices of motion either as part of our agenda. Number 10 is other business. No other business had been mentioned during the agenda portion where it would be added on. If there is any other business from any committee members, please say so now. Okay. And then number 11, we did receive correspondence from a Mr. Marty Schlosser. And I want to thank him for sending that in. I appreciated that correspondence very much. And then the date of our next meeting is yet to be determined. So I believe Ms. Fawcett will follow up with us on that. And last but not least is adjournment. So if I could have a first for adjournment. Thank you, Councillor Neal, and I saw Councillor Doherty as a second. And if I could see a hands, all in favor. Thank you very much. Thank you everyone who was with us today.